So you walk into a bookstore. You're staring at a giant wall of books, completely overwhelmed, and you have no idea what to get. That's where I come in. As a bookseller, my job is to help people find the perfect book. But let me tell you, it's not as simple as just saying, oh, Fourth Wing is popular, here you go. No, there's a bit of an art to it. So let's talk about how hand selling actually works and what makes someone buy a book. The first question I always ask, what are you in the mood for? Not what do you like, because that's too broad. Someone might just say they like fantasy, but are they in the mood for something dark and intense like the Poppy War, or something fun and adventurous like Legends and Lattes? The key is to narrow it down. So instead of fantasy, I'll ask, are you looking for something cozy or something that'll emotionally destroy you? Works every time. This actually goes back to how bookstores used to be in the late 1800s. There weren't sprawling sections like we have today, just booksellers who knew exactly what their customers liked and what sold. If you walked into a shop back then, the bookseller wasn't just selling you a book. They were curating an experience. That's basically what we're still doing today, just, without the waistcoats and the candlelight and no sanitation. Some customers come in and they don't know book titles, but they do know movies and TV shows. I had someone once ask me for a book like Bridgerton, but they'd never read a romance novel before. So I gave them The Duke and I and a contemporary romance, Red, White, and Royal Blue, to see what kind of romance they actually vibe with. This strategy is basically a modern version of how books were sold in the early days of Hollywood. When movies exploded in popularity in the 1920s and 30s, publishers started advertising books as the novel that inspired the film, even when the connection was tenuous at best. We're still doing that today, except now I get to say, you love Succession? Read Pineapple Street. Oh, you love True Detective? Here's The Frozen River. It's actually based on real court transcripts from 1805. That's right. This isn't just a piece of fiction. It's modern history wrapped in a gripping murder case. Pop culture references are the bookseller's secret weapon. People think they want to hear the plot of a book, but what they actually want to know is how it's going to make them feel. If I tell you this is about a guy who goes on a road trip with his dog, you might shrug. But if I say this book will make you want to quit your job and go on an adventure, it's funny, heartfelt, and will make you cry in the best way, suddenly you're intrigued. Perfect example, this book, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. If I say it's about two video game designers, cool, whatever. But if I say this is The Social Network, but if it made you cry, now you need to read it. This is actually an old school bookseller trick. Back in the 1700s, book hawkers, basically street booksellers, would shout about how a book would change your life, not what it was about. They didn't have flashy covers or bestsellers lists. They had to sell the experience. And let me tell you, that still works today. When all else fails, enthusiasm sells. People love personal recommendations. If I say, I just read this and I can't stop thinking about it, they immediately trust it more than a generic recommendation from a pull quote or the summary on the back of the book. It works best when you're genuinely excited about the book because that energy, it's contagious, baby. Believe it or not, this method has been used by bookshops for centuries. In fact, the Charles of the Dickens was one of the first authors to really understand the power of hype. He'd publish his books in serialized form, getting readers so hooked that by the time the final installment came out, people were lining up at bookshops like it was the latest Fourth Wing drop. Mrs. Yaros, when's the fourth book coming? I know you gotta write a contemporary first, but I just need a date. Thank you. Speaking of Fourth Wing, I recently had a guest come up to me looking for a rec for her friend who loves Fourth Wing. I took the easy way out and said, ACOTAR, naturally. But she had read those too. Okay, so let me think. Then I realized that sometimes the best thing to do is to lean on your team because every bookseller has different taste. I remembered I was talking to a coworker the other day about Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. Miss City of Bones, because the sequel had just come out, The Rag Picker King. She said she loved it, and since it has fantasy, romance, action, and adventure, all the things in ACOTAR and Fourth Wing, that's what I ended up recommending to her. She grabbed it right off the shelf and bought it. Those moments make a bookseller's heart flutter. And that's the magic of hand selling. It's not about pushing best sellers. It's about making a book feel like the book for that person. So if you ever feel lost in a bookstore, just ask a bookseller. Trust me, we love making book recommendations. All right, I want to know, what's a book you'd hand sell to someone right now? Drop it in the comments below, and if you want more bookseller secrets, hit that like button and subscribe. Mahalo for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.